Well, hello, everyone. Let me join my welcome to Stephanie's. I'm Janet B. I've recovered from compulsive eating and bulimia. I'm really happy to be with you all. It was so nice to meet some of you this past week. Let's see. I met Chanel, Judy, Laura, and I probably met some more of you, but I can only see one screen at a time. But it was really lovely to be together. And just as an aside, Melissa and I were talking about possibly doing a recovery jam type weekend. If you are interested, I've got my number up there. Shoot me a text. And now we are going to pick up. We are on step 4. So just to recap, we did step 1, admitted we were powerless, which meant that no matter how much we want to stop, we are unable to, and that our lives are unmanageable. They just don't work. They have the symptoms listed on page 52. We've come to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And in order to believe that, we have to believe this power cares about us. So we worked our way through that. And then step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So now we've gone from a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And step 3, it's God as we understand him. So we've talked about that. We've talked about what surrendering our lives to God means. And then last week, we started working through the beginning of step 4, going through our defects and our resentments. And we have forms on our website. Stephanie will put the link in the chat to our defect list and our resentment list. So we are going to pick it up on fears, page 6, bottom of page 67. I think this is one of the coolest paragraphs in the book. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. So they're saying that part of every resentment or most resentments, there's fear involved. It says this short word, fear, touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. Okay, there is a lot there. So it says fear is an evil and corroding threat. So a lot of times we think of fear as an emotion, right? Like I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm afraid. Okay, the big book never says that being sad is evil, but they call fear an evil and corroding thread. Why? Why would fear be called evil? So I thought about that. And then they said, it set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve, but we set the ball rolling. So they're saying fear is evil. It has the power to set in motion bad things that bring us misfortune. And basically, we set the ball rolling, so it's our fault. So let's unpack that because that's a lot in there. Okay, so how could fear be evil? So I was really thinking about that. And so I was pondering, like, okay, step 2, came to believe a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, right? Faith that God could help me. That is kind of a weird step, right? The other steps are action steps. Admitted, write an inventory, ask God to remove, make amends. But step 2 is just came to believe. Why? Why does it matter what I believe? If I have pneumonia, it doesn't matter if I believe that penicillin will help me. As long as I take the penicillin, I'm okay. But step 2 tells me I have to believe that God will restore me to sanity. Okay, what's fear? So if faith is trusting that God will restore me to sanity, because remember, we talked about this in step 2, faith is the currency in the spiritual world. I can't hand God my American Express card and say, okay, here's my card. I'm paying you $10,000. Help me recover. The currency in the spiritual world is faith. So believing that God will restore me to sanity is actually a catalyst that allows God to restore me to sanity. I have to believe it. That's why faith is so important. So what's fear? Fear is kind of believing in the other team. It's believing that God won't restore me to sanity, but that bad things will happen. Well, so it's basically I have faith that God won't be there. So what is my currency now in the spiritual world? A kind of negative faith in God, a faith that bad things are going to happen. And because faith is currency in the spiritual world, my faith that bad things will happen, which is what fear is, right? Faith that bad things will happen. It sets in motion trains of circumstances which bring us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. I don't deserve this to happen to me, right? But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? So I am responsible for getting rid of my fear. That's what they're telling me, right? So it says sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing, put in the same category as stealing. Well, if we steal, we could get put in jail. So stealing is pretty bad. They're saying fear causes more trouble than like theft. And they say it ought to be classed with stealing in the same class. And I'm thinking, okay, where is stealing classed? And the first thing that came to my mind was, thou shalt not steal, one of the 10 commandments, right? And they're saying fear ought to be in that like same category. Well, we all know there's no commandment that says thou shalt not fear. But there is a commandment that says thou shalt have no other gods before me. And if I'm trusting in fear, if I'm trusting that bad things will happen, I've put something above my trust in God. Okay. So they're telling us fear is really bad. They're telling us why, because it is like a catalyst that can make bad things happen. And so here we are saying, okay, I'm full of fear. What do I do? So at least now we know we have to get rid of it. And they're going to tell us how. Page 68. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. So it says, okay, we take our fears and we list them, right? It's part of our step 4 inventory. Sometimes it's as a result of the resentment, right? It's like one of Bill's fears was Mr. Brown may get my job. Well, he had fear, obviously, if he would lose his job. And sometimes we just have a plain fear that has no resentment attached to it, right? And says, so we list it. We asked ourselves why we had the fear. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Okay, I've seen some fear inventories that says, list your fear. And then the next column is, did self-reliance fail me? Check yes or no. Okay, always it's because self-reliance failed me. And self-reliance is relying on myself rather than on God. So we asked ourselves why we had them. So the best way I heard to do this was from Herb K was a drill down. So I'll give you guys my best example. When my daughter was 16, I had a fear of disciplining her. Okay. So if I drill down, if I discipline my daughter, then once she turns 18, she'll never talk to me again. If she never talks to me again, I'll be alone on holidays. If I'm alone on holidays, I'll be sad. So we drill down to I'll be sad or I'll be uncomfortable because that's what I've never found a fear that doesn't drill down to one of those things. So we do that. Then we look for our dishonest thinking. So what's my dishonest thinking there? Appropriately disciplining children leads to them never talking to you again. If I don't have a relationship with my daughter, I'll be all alone on holidays. I don't know what happened to my husband and son, but my inventory, they were dead, I guess, and it was just me and my daughter. And, and then if I'm alone on holidays, if I don't have my daughter for holidays, I won't have anywhere to go. So I look at all my dishonest thinking. So I do those three things, and then I put it aside for a minute and go back to the big book. So we know now that fear is bad. We've seen our fears, and they say, okay, either self-confidence doesn't work, feeling cocky doesn't work. And they say, perhaps there is a better way. We think so. For we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. So that is why it is so important to not do our fourth step until we have a solid second and third step, right? Because it says, I'm already on the basis of trusting and relying on God. In step 2 and 3, I learned God is trustworthy, that I can rely on him to take care of me. So it says, we trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. And then it has the world's best math formula. We are in the world to play the role he, God, assigns, just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us and humbly rely on him, does he enable us to match calamity with serenity. So they are giving me a formula on how to have serenity all the time. And you'll see that how much calamity there is isn't a factor, not a factor at all. I don't know if any of y'all have heard of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He was a pastor during the World War II era. He was in Germany. He got to America. He actually went back on when Hitler was there saying, I will have no right to help in the rebuilding of Germany after World War II if I'm not with my people during the war. He got put in a concentration camp and he got executed. And what people around him said was, even while he was in the concentration camp, even right before he was executed, and I would say that's probably the hallmark of calamity, he exuded serenity. So how much calamity isn't a factor? So here's our formula. A units of doing what I think God would have me, which is A units of obedience, plus B units of humbly relying on him, which is trust. So it would be A units of obedience plus B units of trust equals AB units of serenity. So if I don't have serenity, I need to check myself. I'm either not doing what I think God would have me do, or I'm not trusting him with the results. That's it. Those are the only two things I can control. I cannot control the calamity around me. I can control, am I acting in accordance with God's will? Am I trusting him with the outcome? So then it tells us, we never apologize to anyone for depending upon our creator. We laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. It's the way of strength. The verdict of the ages means that it was proved all through the ages. Faith means courage. So courage doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have any fear at all. I mean, that's, I think, impossible. But it means that while we have fear, we trust God and we're obedient and we're trusting. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. So we have our first three columns, right? I'm afraid to discipline my daughter. I drill down to I'll be sad or uncomfortable. I look at the dishonest thinking. And then I take my fear inventory and I pray over each one. God, please remove this fear. Show me what you would have me be or what you would have me do. So in that instance, what would God have me do? Discipline my daughter appropriately. I was not disciplining her as kind of an insurance policy to make sure I'd have a place to go for Thanksgiving. And that was selfish. So again, we ask God to remove our fear. Then our last column is, what would he have me do? Often it would be just live in the day, right? If we're afraid of someone dying or something like that, live in the day. Okay, so that's fear. So now what I generally have my sponsees do is a harms inventory, and it doesn't list it here talking about step 4, but later in step 8 it says we have a list of people we've harmed. We made it when we take inventory. So again, that sheet is on our website, Steph. I think it says like step 8 harms or something like that. So here's what I have people do. First column, who I hurt. Second column, what I did. Third column, how it hurt them. And I think that's important because when we make amends, we're going to want to balance the scales. So for instance, who I hurt, Joe, what did I do? I punched him in the nose. How did it hurt him? Well, it may have been I broke his nose and he had a $5,000 doctor bill. It may have just been I embarrassed him in front of his friends. Okay, so I just fill out how it hurt them. And then the next column, column 4, what should I have done instead? Not punch Joe in the nose. And I leave column 5 blank because when I do my A step, I'm going to fill it in. But for now, I'm just looking at all my harms. Who I hurt? Macy's. What did I do? I stole a bottle of perfume. How did it hurt them? They were out $100. What should I have done instead? Either paid for it or gone without. Okay, so the 4th column kind of helps us learn what new behaviors we want to start practicing. And so harm inventory. Then we do a sex inventory. So page 68, about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling here. And then it goes on to the next page, page 69, and they say, some people think all troubles are based on sex, that we don't have enough of it or it's not the right kind. Some people feel the opposite. And the way they put it, one school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. It says, we want to stay out of this controversy. So we are not life coaches. We are not like religion coaches, that we are just 12-step guides when we're sponsor. We want to stay out of this controversy. It says, we do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. And by the way, I would say we can fill in that blank with a lot of things. We want to stay out of the controversy. We don't want to be the arbiter of anyone's blank, of anyone's food plan, of anyone's politics, of anyone's religious. We stay out of that controversy. So it tells us what we do. And it's very similar to a harms list. I have my sponsees use the same form, but there's a few extra things we look at. It says, we reviewed our conduct over the years. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? So looking at our past relationships. And so these are past like romantic relationships. We look, did we needlessly arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? So we're not responsible for anyone's well-being. So I heard this saying someone said at the conference, let me see if I can remember it. For someone's issues, we didn't cause it, we can't control it, and we can't cure it, but we don't want to contribute to it. Okay, so we look, Did we contribute to things? And again, what should we have done instead? We got this all down on paper and looked at it. So that's the next part. And then the final part of step 4 is we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? So when I look back on my past relationships, I would say pretty much selfish, selfish, selfish. And what should I have done instead? It was often not gotten involved or got out a lot sooner. Okay. And then we want to shape a sex ideal. And so that basically means, when am I allowed to have sex? So if someone's married, they ask themselves, do I have to be faithful to my marriage? If they're not married, it's under what conditions is it okay for me to have sex? Can I pick up a guy in a bar as long as I'm honest? Do I have to wait till I'm in a committed relationship? Do I have to wait until I'm married? It's very specific. When is it okay for us to have sex? And also, especially for people in relationships, how am I supposed to act in a relationship? So there is a podcast I heard that I thought was fantastic. It's on A Vision for You. It was by Gina R. on January 27th, 2019. And if someone wants to put the link in the chat, that would be great. She does a podcast with 2 other people. She's first, and she talks about an ideal within marriage, how to act within marriage. And I thought it was fantastic. So a good thing to listen to. So it tells us our sex powers are God-given, therefore good, not to be used lightly or selfishly, and not to be despised and loathed. Then it tells us whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. So it's like God will help us know our ideal, but then we need to grow toward it. We need to work on upholding it. We have to be willing to make amends where we've done harm, provided we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. Meaning, that if someone sleeps with someone else's husband, it does not mean that you knock on her door and say, I had a 2-year affair with her husband. We want to be very careful. And that's why we have sponsors and people who've gone before us who can help us in these areas. And it says, we treat sex as we would any other problem. Okay, how do we treat any other problem? In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. So they are telling us that with respect to relationships and other problems in life, we go to God. We say, like, Father, what would you have me do in this situation? And the right answers will come if we really want it. And if we really want it means we're trying to do God's will in all areas of our lives. I have no right to go out, in an extreme example, and rob a bank and then come back and say, God, how do you want me to act with my husband? Right? Remember, this assumes we've surrendered our lives to God and are trying to live in harmony with his will for us. Okay. Then it tells us God alone can judge our sex situation. That, again, God alone can judge my politics and my religion. Other people have no right to comment on it. And my food plan. I don't say God alone there. I say God and my sponsor. But I personally don't talk about my food plan to other people because, 1, I don't want people to judge me if maybe I'm eating something they don't think I should. And 2, I don't want people to say, oh, well, Janet eats this, so I guess I can too, if it's something they can't. Or if there's something I can't have, but they're fine with, I don't want them to say, uh-oh, maybe it's not okay. It might be fine for you, not for me. So again, our politics, our food plans, and our religions really aren't other people's business. So it says counsel with other persons is desirable, but we let God be the final judge. Page 70. We realize some people are as fanatical about sex and food plans and religion and politics as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice with relationships, with food plans, with religion, and with politics. And then it says, suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal. So they're talking about our sex ideal and stumble. Does this mean we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half truth. So it means maybe you will. It depends on us and our motives. So I think, again, we can apply this to falling down on our sex ideal and just causing harm in general. If we are sorry for what we have done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, I love that. Not like me change, let God change me. We believe we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. And then listen to this line, guys. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. Okay, I think this is really important because sometimes people say if someone eats compulsively, it means they don't have a first step. So what are they told? Get a new sponsor, hear a new voice, and start over at step one. That is absolutely wrong. So let's say the person falls down on their sex ideal, like it says here, and keeps doing it. Let's say someone's sex ideal is to be faithful in her marriage and she keeps cheating on her husband. She's not sorry and her conduct harms others and she goes out and binges. The absolute worst thing to advise her is to go get a new sponsor and start over. The best thing to tell her is start living up to your sex ideal. Because if you're continuing to harm others and you're not sorry, you will keep binging. So we need to look at ourselves if we're struggling in the area of being abstinent. Are we engaging in conduct that harms others? It may not be cheating on our husbands, but are we doing something that's harmful to others that we're not sorry about and we keep doing it? We can't live like that. It says we are quite sure to drink. So someone comes to me and says she's been binging and she wants to like start over with me as a new sponsor. I will ask her like, is there an amend you haven't yet made? And if she says yes, before I'll go any further, I'll say you need to make those amends. Like if she's at that step. If someone says, I can't stop binging and I'm cheating on my husband, it's like, stop cheating on your husband, then we'll talk, right? So again, if we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink, to binge. Okay, then it says to sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for God to give us his ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity and for strength to do the right thing. Then it says, is sex is very troublesome. And I would say fill in the blank. If dealing with our kids is very troublesome, if our boss is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. Help others. We think of their needs and we work for them. See that word, work? Not a 2-minute conversation. We put in work. We put in effort. We put in the hardest thing, time helping others. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge, the selfish, strong urge, when to yield would mean heartache. And then they summarize and tell us the fruits of step 4, bottom of page 70. If we've been thorough about our personal inventory, we've written down a lot. We've listed and analyzed our resentments. We've begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. They're futile, like they're useless, and they're fatal. If we're a safe harbor for resentments, we're in trouble. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. And then here's the fruit, the 4th step promises. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies. For we look on them as sick people, or remember, spiritually developing people, humans just like us. So if we've learned tolerance means my own ability to withstand frustration or people not doing what I want is raised. I don't get as angry anymore. Doesn't bother me. Patience. That means I don't have to get everything I want today. Tomorrow is okay. No, I'm kidding. Whenever God wants to give it to me is okay. Patience, right? And goodwill toward all, because we see people as spiritually developing. Um, I think I told y'all last week that my daughter and my son-in-law who work together just up and quit their jobs with no notice. She'd been there 3 years, he'd been there 1. And I'm thinking, son-in-law, how could you just do this? Guide my daughter like this. You're supposed to be the head of the family. But I don't sit there in big anger. Tolerance. He's spiritually developing. He isn't there yet. Patience, goodwill. It's none of my business. I say nothing to either of them about what were you thinking. I don't say a word and I don't obsess about it. It's like my job is to be kind and loving, and what they decide to do, if they end up on food stamps because they have no money, it's not my business. And that is the only way that I can keep sane and sober and happy. My daughter and her husband are spiritually developing. It's none of my business. Remember what we said last week. Most of our resentments will go away when we realize that these things are none of our business. So again, they finish by saying, in this book, you read again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. Remember that faith does something. If I believe God is going to help me in this area, it's like it sets it in motion that God will help me. We hope now you are convinced. So we should ask ourselves at the end of step 4, are we convinced God can remove whatever self-will has blocked us off from him? So God removes it. I cooperate it, but God removes it. So I will say that like my self-will, even though I have like bouts of it every day, it is not as strong as it once was, or like I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be lying on my couch, like watching Netflix or something. But God removes a lot of our self-will. If you've already made a decision, well, what kind of a decision? A decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand him. And an inventory of our grosser handicaps. Isn't that a cool word, handicap? Like it handicaps us from getting as close to God as we can, from not being obsessed with food, from having a good relationships with others. We're people who are handicapped. I'm spiritually handicapped. It says you've made a good beginning. This is just the beginning. That being so, you swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. This process is like not always fun. Like a lot of people hate it. I personally loved it because in my 4th step, I got to spend hours and hours writing about my favorite topic, myself. So it doesn't matter if we go through it, if we enjoy it, if we hate it, some people get super emotional, some people get depressed, it doesn't matter. But here's what I will say. Some people say, well, going through this 4th step and looking at my past was so stressful that I binged. And to that I say, no, I'm not buying that. You're not getting away with that malarkey with me. Remember, we've taken a 3rd step. So we trust that God loves us no matter what. And that gives me the courage to look at my defects, my resentments, my fears, the wreckage that I've created. So don't ever use that as an excuse. Well, my 4th step is so stressful that I binge. No, remember, we can have serenity no matter what is going on around us. So we have now made a good beginning. And next week, we will be back here talking about step 5, which has the absolute most beautiful promises in the whole big book, in my opinion. So that is it for now from me.